Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the Cyber Gizmo, I'm going to be presenting a response to a comment that a user on the Linux Saloon made. It's been probably 3 weeks ago now, in regards to the security posture of Debian versus Ubuntu. Right after this. What we want to talk about is Ubuntu really more secure than Debian? Because that's the basis of the comment. So where did this come from? So 2 weeks ago, I think, or three, one of the participants on the Linux Saloon told everyone not to use Debian, use Ubuntu instead because Debian packages are old and not secure. Now, I think it's hard to say whether he was talking about the Workstation or whether he was talking about the server version of the system, but it could be a blanket statement that meant both. So he didn't define anything. First of all, he didn't define what he meant by secure. What do you mean by secure? I mean, because secure, there is no such thing as a completely secure distro. I mean, I dispel that myth right now. There is so much literature that's been published on this. That is a generalized accepted fact. You cannot 100% secure anything in Linux, Unix, Windows, Mac OS, or Android. Sorry. All you can do is manage to risk. So how much risk are you willing to accept, and what are you willing to pay for in order to secure what you are, what you're willing to secure and get it to the posture that you want. So first of all, we talk about two things in security. One is the attack surface. The more packages you have installed on your system, the more services you have installed on your system, the larger the attack surface is for that particular system. That is one of the reasons why AT&T, so they go way back into the 70s, why AT&T always said one app, one system. And that was to reduce the surface for anything to go wrong. But later on, it also applied to security as well. Yeah, we didn't worry too much about security back in the old days. So when I heard that comment, I was a bit surprised because Debian is used as the basis for so many security distributions and security tools. And that includes things like Kali Linux, Kodachi Linux, Parrot Security, Pure OS, Tails, Unix, and there's tons more. There's an awful lot of systems. Cubes has a Debian cube that is installed in order for you to add that to the posture. Now, Cubes itself runs CentOS, so as its core bit of operating system. So we have a question here that we need to determine what the actual answer is. So I'm going to turn this thing into is Ubuntu more secure than Debian? That's really the question. So there's a couple of approaches that we could use in order to answer that question. We have two different methods in the IT industry that we use. Now, these are generalizations. First one is the scientific method. Scientists use that most of the time to answer, they build up a question and then they do some research and then they find, well, okay, so I have this question. How am I going to answer that question? And they build up a research base to determine how to put that question into the form of a hypothesis. An hypothesis is the question plus the type of thing you're trying to measure in order to determine whether or not you answered the question and whether or not what you are saying is true or false. And it doesn't matter which one it is. The second method is the engineering design process. The EDP is more or less used for defining a problem, building a solution around that problem, like you go and do the research again. This time, you're building up Kanbans, or you're building up requirements, or you're building up objectives or goals or something that is measurable that tells tells you as a developer and you as the end user and the customer or the recipient of this, did we build a solution that meets your needs? And do you agree with that? That's a bigger question. So yeah, so then you do your phase where you identify how you're going to evaluate the requirements, and then you brainstorm about the solution. So I have this Kanban that I have to do. I need a GUI. I need to have certain elements on that screen, for example, or whatever. But then I'll start to prototype it, and I'll bring it back. You keep trying to bring back the stepwise refinement of your solution, and you present it to the user that is paying for your work, or they're sponsoring your work in some way that allows you to continue to do development. Then once you develop that prototype, you get a sign off, you develop your final solution, and then you start to test. So that is to see whether or not the solution is meeting the needs that you started out as identifying that you wanted to solve. So the long and the short of it is, for today, the EDP is a fine process, but it doesn't solve. It's more than I need for solving this, and I think the scientific method, I don't know what happened to this graphic, but it kind of went wonky. So there are 6 steps, and we'll talk about each one. I mean, I know that's an eye chart, but there are 6 steps in the scientific method that we have to complete in order to do things. Now, there's no absolutes here. I'm not saying that the EDP won't work. It would, but yeah, you just have to do a lot more work to get it to be able to provide an answer. So that we just don't need to do. We already will, as you'll see. So the first step, I have to ask a question. Now that's already been done. That was the statement that particular person made. I have turned into a question. So, and that question is Ubuntu 22.04 more secure than Debian 11? Specifically 11.5, which is currently the most current version of Debian that is out there. So, what does this question have to be? It has to be in the form of who, what, how, when, why, where, all those types of things. But you're trying to understand something that you can measure. I have something that is determinate. It either is more secure or it is not more secure. That is determinate, and I need to be able to figure out a way to measure that. So that takes us to the second step, because we don't know how to measure it just yet. So we need to perform some background research to determine, okay, what are the things I can do out there? Now, I have done videos on these tools already. So, I mean, if you've watched very many of my videos, you know that I like to take and bring these tools in. The first one is one that's relatively new. It's a tool from Ubuntu, and that it can be used to install that can be used to harden an Ubuntu 22.04 or a 20.04 or an Ubuntu 22.04 server image. And that is a GitHub, out in a GitHub repository. They publish the scripts, and it does a really good job. And I'll put a link as to where I discussed that from previous runs. The second tool is Linus. The reason I'm using Linus is there are other security measurement mechanisms. However, not all of those require an XML script that contains the areas to be tested and the response that I'm expecting to see. Those have to be written for each version of the operating system, and Debian is not. It does not currently have one of those XML files. Now, I probably could adapt the one from Ubuntu, but that would require work on my part, a lot of work. I mean, those XML files are 900 steps, something like that. They're pretty lengthy. So would be the correct way, but I just need a shorthand to do this, and Linus will give me, I think, at least a starting answer. It should be able to get the major things and pull the chunks out and say, the large rocks out and say, oh, well, this is how the two systems compare at this level. Is it the definitive answer? No. But it is a way that I can use to measure, and it's a way I've used to measure my distribution reviews in the past. So that's the one I'll be using. That is from Sysify, and that is a pretty good tool. So one of the research things that I noticed when I was looking at other people's use of Linus, not mine, but other people's, that when they have manually hardened their systems, both Debian and Ubuntu, they got to scores of 90 plus. So that's where I want to be too. Since those are pretty consistent, once you've completed hardening, you get to about 90 plus. That's where I want to be too. So I already have some background. I kind of have what I want to measure, and I know what value I'm looking to get. So I'm ready to construct a hypothesis. So what is a hypothesis? So it's a educated guess, and typically I do mine like this. If I do something, I expect this result. So yeah, and the hypothesis needs to be based on what others have observed and concluded. When you examine similar questions to ours, it should be a combination of the test I plan to do and clearly state the result that you think you will see. So a hypothesis is neither right or wrong, but it has to be something that you can measure. If it isn't, then it's not a good hypothesis. So mine for this that I'm going to put through the grinder is, if I harden a supported Linux distro, Ubuntu or Debian, I expect to see at least a 90 plus hardening index without doing any manual configuration at all. Once we have that and we're ready to go, we think we have a hypothesis. We have to perform some experiments to see what result do I get based on inputs that these different things provide, right? So the first thing I should do is I should run a control. A control would be I install Debian, I install Ubuntu, and I just run Linus to see what I get. I've already got videos on that. So I have videos on Debian 11, I have videos on Ubuntu 2004 and 2204. And you can see the result of that. It's about 61, 62, or maybe, yeah, somewhere in there, that I get as my baseline run. So without doing anything to the system, the hypothesis fails. So we already know that. We have to do some kind of hardening. We can't just take the systems, put them out there and say, oh, this meets the hypothesis, because it does not. So I know I have to run the hardening script. And then I can run Sysify Linus to measure the hardening index, and I want to repeat that for an install of Debian 11.5. Now, according to the hardening GitHub site, they prefer to run their script on a minimal install of Ubuntu server, because that's what it's written for. Well, why would you use the minimal version of it? Because it's easier to control. The more packages you put on a system, the larger your attack surface is in terms of security. That is, as you add packages, particularly, but not always. I mean, just having a package out there by itself, if it's in used or pulled into the network in some way, like say, it could be a database, or it could be a library that supports the database. That library in itself could make the database vulnerable, and if the database is vulnerable and it's hooked up to, say, an Nginx or an Apache web server, then I could have a vulnerability that is exposed to the outside world. So yeah, and the more packages you have, the more risk you run in those lines. Plus, the more packages you have, the more difficulty you have in establishing what is secure and what has been tested to be secure and what has not been tested to be secure. So that's the reason why they want to run against the minimal, is because the attack surface is smaller. So then I want to run Sysify Linus to measure the hardening index, and then repeat that for Debian 11.5. When we're looking at, then we gather the data, right? We gather up the data and that'll be in the form of the Linus logs. And we have to look at that data from the eyes of a third party. We cannot allow, I have bias. I run both Debian and I run Ubuntu servers in my network. I have to set my biases aside. I cannot have a vision in my head of which way I want this to go. I have to say, I don't care. I'm just wanting to see what's the truth here? What's the result? Because I could do something that would go, oh, I know on Debian I can do blah, 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 and that'll improve my posture. So in my case, I'm going to run it through once without making any manual changes, and then I will run it through again with manual changes in order to bring it either to see what maximum values I can get and to see if I make any manual changes based on the recommendations of the Linux script, does that move that index up or down? So yeah, it's just I'm interested to see, while I'm doing these experiments, can I affect that very, very much? Can I affect that hardening index very much? Then I'm just going to simply compare the two together and see what they look like, right? They're running about the same test, so we'll see if they're the same. And the same thing happens when I gather up this stuff. I need to report the results, and it doesn't matter if the test that I did either proves the hypothesis or it doesn't. So if it doesn't prove the hypothesis, in other words, there was something in the experiment that just, I don't know. I don't know if that means what it says. Maybe I didn't get to a 90 plus, or I had some failure in the middle of it. So yeah, but I have to report it either way. I have to tell you what happened. And again, stay neutral. We all have biases. We can't get rid of them. It's not like you can just go chuck it off at the door when you enter the room and then start working on it. But you have to keep in mind that you're trying to get to a truth. And that truth is defined by the bounds of the experiment and the hypothesis that you're trying to test. You cannot infer. Now, I've seen a lot of really badly used scientific methods. The only thing that I can say about this test is that for Ubuntu, on whatever version I am testing, 2204 in this case, and Debian, 11.5 in this case, these are the facts. If you put Debian 10 out there or Debian 12 out there, or you test with Ubuntu's 1804 or 2004, I don't know what those results are. I don't know how you can apply those. But I do know that it applies for the latest releases of both Debian and Ubuntu, which is the goal of what I'm trying to do. I can expand this more over time, but it takes more work to do that. I'm going to post those results of the two runs. There's going to be 2 runs for each. Actually 3. There's a control run that shows what the results are without doing any hardening at all, without running the hardening script. There's one that's done just neutral. So I run the hardening script and I stop. What do I get for both systems? And then I will do whatever I can to correct some of the comments that are in Linus that are obvious, ones that I can fix. Such as in this case, it will be to modify some variables in the SSH D configuration and install a package called apt show versions, which it wants. I can then, if it's a complete failure and I don't reach the 90 plus, I need probably to rewrite the hypothesis to make it, if it's 85 or 88, I need to write that into the hypothesis and change it and then rerun the experiment to see whether or not I got that. So that's what we're going to do. And so let's get started. Set your, as they say in the instructions, set it to English or your whatever particular language is your home. It doesn't matter. But set that up appropriately. I'm going to update to the new installer. I am using the latest download from Ubuntu, and I'm using the server download. I'll need to set up this to run on the server minimize, which is what we talked about. So I don't want the full server. I don't have a proxy. I let the mirror default, and then I'm going to go down and make a custom storage layout. Then you'll go to the free space, and we'll start setting up our partitions. So the first one will be boot, and we'll give it a gig. You can leave it ext, that's fine. and then create it. And that's our first one. It'll show up at the top here, giving it the rest of the disk. So the reason why I need var here is because Linus will look for it. So that all looks good, and I think we're done. So we'll go ahead and write those changes out to disk, and then I'll start setting up for the install. I need a user. I need a user. This is set UB for Ubuntu. Give it a password, a very secure password. So secure, even I don't know it. No, I'm kidding. And we skip that part. We don't install the SSH server. Okay. So let's reboot it. All right, let's take a look at how much disk space we've got. So it's taking about 3.9 gig used on the minimum. And I have all my layout of my boot, my var temp, var log. I'm going to check for swap, and swap is enabled, as you can see there. And then we'll see if it's actually using it, and it is. So swap is enabled and it's in use. Let's check our FS tab and copy it. So you see that it's all set to defaults. All of those partitions are on this area right here are all set to defaults. So that's hopefully what the script will change for us. But usually it screws up and deletes a bunch of these entries. So it still has some bugs in it, I guess. All right, now I'm going to SSH into the box. But first I need to have the IP address of what to try to go into. So 111. All right, let's go ahead and get in there. The reason for that is I need to copy and paste some of the things that are coming from the site, like what packages I need to have installed, right? No get. And I guess we'll put up NetTools, which is a requirement, and Pro CPS. And UFD. UFW is not installed by default, and they configure it, which is odd, that they don't require it, and they won't catch it. So make sure you have it installed. Otherwise, the configuration will fail, and then you will be running without a firewall. Okay, now I'm going to clone the hardening script. But I got to go get the URL off of the site, so I'm gone to go do that. All right, I'm back. I'm going to paste it in. So there's the constructoid hardening get, and it's downloaded now. Go into hardening, and we'll take a look at what we got. I got to go edit this config file, and there's no VI. Okay, all right, so we'll put vim out, I guess. Vim, im, there we go. And that's done. Now I should be able to edit it. So, all right, I'm going to change this to the machine that I'm currently running on. And we'll come down here and we'll add some stuff in to change me. All right, and we'll save that and quit. That's all I need to do. So now I should be, I'm going to go ahead and get the system up to date. I don't care what they say. I'm going to get it up to date first about not installing or upgrading packages. Because, yeah, I have noticed some really squirrely behavior in this thing, so I want to make sure my system's up to date. I can restart those one at a time, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to reboot because I have a new kernel. So, yeah. I should be able to run the hardening script. And you do that by doing a sudo bash ubuntu.sh. And here we go. Password sometime today. Here we go. And this is just going to start going through each one of those scripts that were listed and doing whatever they say to do. So this is the actual process for hardening that the Ubuntu folks have given us. So now it's almost done. It's in the post-processing step here. And you'll notice that it is updating some components and adding a few others. All right, it's all done. All done. So at this point, I would then reboot the server as their instructions on the hardening GitHub page, but I need to fix my FS tab. So BCK is there. And we'll go and edit that. So I'm going to have to, there we go. I add a whole bunch of these, and then I'll just read the FS tab BCK back in. And no exec. I think I need no exec. Maybe I don't need no exec. No, I don't need no exec for that one. All right. Because we do want to have executables in our home directory. But I noticed that it did not, I'm not sure if it's supposed to link temp over to bar temp, but I mean, I would think that's what it was trying to do. See, my mount points are all fixed up here. Yeah, that looks good. Boot, bar log, bar temp, home, audit. Yeah, that all looks great. But anyway, we'll go and we'll get, we'll clone down Linus. And you've probably seen this 100 times, but that's all right. When I ran this initially without the hardening script, I got a 62 for the Ubuntu server without being hardening. Now, yeah, Git got removed, so I got to put it back on. The script does remove the packages that shouldn't be there. I should probably remove this too when I'm done, but I don't. It's probably a good idea not to have tools there that help people put scripts on your system. So yeah, I'll have to be completely root for this because they also have changed the nmask, which of course sets your permissions when you create a new file, a new directory, and a new file. So yeah. All right, I'm going to tee this over so I can save the results. And I'll call it post, and we'll go ahead and just run it. Let's see what we get. This will take a minute. I should have installed Linus first before running it. That would have prevented it. So all right. So yeah, we don't have. Now the DNS configuration is going to be unique to Ubuntu. For some reason, I think this might be a bug. They hose the resolve.config file. And then you'll notice that it also missed a couple of hardening things here that I am going to manually fix. So my hypothesis is not clean, right? So, well, but we will see. I'm just going to make these changes, but we'll still look and see what the results of the test was. The client active count needs to be set to 2. You got it? All right. Change it to a 2. All right, good. You can quit. Okay, so let's keep going down here. We got that mess cleaned up. And what was our score? Running it again. I don't know, it didn't stop. So I'm running it again. So it's a 92. So it didn't change, even though I had those two things I needed to do. I'm not going to repeat the steps. I mean, other than the fact, let me just show you what I did on this one to get it to run. So I had to go in here, and the first thing I had to do was go into scripts. And I had to edit pre. And down here, you'll see that it's going after the LSB release. This will say grep for Debian, so Ubuntu. So you'll need to have it say grep for Debian, and that'll allow the pre-script to execute. The other thing I had to do was edit this. Edit the Ubuntu shell, and then down here at the end you'll notice the F post. I commented it out, so it's not running that. That allows it to go through this final step and finish up the install. So I can, even though, well, it also screws up the etc tab. So yeah, you'll notice I have already put those all back. So let's just see what we get. All right, I'm just going to tee it off to a new file. I won't let it run through. So let's just see if it's at 92. Let's see what we got. So vulnerable packages out because we have some updates we have to apply. You'll get this when Debian has updated. So let's see. We'll fix that in a minute. Yeah, it's saying update, please. IP tables was the same. Yes, I have fixed the hardening manually. So I just want you to know that I did that previously. I don't, Debian, you can, the nice thing about Debian is you can let things kind of sit for a few months, but yeah, so let's see if I get that same thing. I'm going to overwrite that log. Still 92. Let's see if I got rid of yeah, I got rid of the warning. So yeah, so there's a slight difference between these two. The first thing you'll notice is, let me just bring them both up here. Do we have exact parity in the error messages? I have 9 and 10, so no. They're the same except for this one. So yeah, the IP tables, hardened SSH. So they're the same. I mean, other than that one screw up that Ubuntu does with the DNS server. But one difference is that here, 92 is the index based on 274 tests performed. This this is Debian, and this side over here is Ubuntu, and that's 272. I can show you that is definitely Ubuntu. See? And this one is definitely Debian. I mean, I don't want to be accused of cheating here. So, yeah. So, yeah, I have everything set up. So, uname all. There's the patch on version 5.10.113, which comes with Debian 5, and then this one should be 5/15/30 generic. So that one was compiled May the 5th, and this one was the 29th of April. So is Debian too old? So here's my comment on that. All right. So if you bring in the latest packages, you risk having to recertify a server environment if you're in production. Same thing could happen with workstations. If you are certifying, I mean, anything in a production network should be security certified in some fashion or another. If you are allowing users to just willy-nilly update their systems and you're not managing it yourself, and you're allowing new packages to go out, then you could potentially be opening up your environment. You could be increasing the surface area, your attack surface, in your environment. So, I mean, I would argue that having the latest packages is not necessarily what you want in a production environment. What about home? We all want something bright and shiny, but remember, the newer the package, the less of the security testing has gone on with it. So if you're willing to, again, it's all about risk. If you're willing to live with that risk, that's fine. I'm not here to argue with you. I personally don't do that. I just no. On my laptop here, I do, because this is where I experiment and play with new things. So I do keep them up to date. But I think that as far as the results of the test, is Debian less secure than Ubuntu, or is Ubuntu more secure than Debian? I think the answer is no. They're the same. They're exactly the same. And that's what I would kind of expect. Ubuntu pulls from the Debian pool. They make branding changes to the Debian packages. They add their own special sauce. And also, let's make sure, since we're here, yeah, no snaps have been installed. I don't know if anything needs to be updated on this one. Let's see. Possible, I guess. Let's see. Do I have any updates pending for? Yes. What are they? Oh, you're going to make me type it all in. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Oh, we've got some... got a new Linux kernel. Yeah, but you do have to watch out, because Ubuntu will release at some point a update to the LTS. There'll be a 2204.1, 2204.2, and those do bring in new packages, so updates to packages. So you do have to watch out for that. You can control that on the Debian side, although they don't do that. They backport any security changes in, and that's it. And that's why the guy, I'm not going to mention his name. I mean, I'm not here to beat people up. I'm just here to correct things that are said that are incorrect. So that's why I am doing this video today, is to show you that that statement is wrong. What can we conclude from all of this? So the thing you have to realize is that today there's a lot of this happening where people will just say stuff, and then we'll all sit here and accept it. No, unless there is something, I won't do that. I won't come to you and say, oh, this is true, and then just let it go and expect you to take my word for it. No, I will actually go through the work and show you the proof, and that's what you have to do. And because, like my boss said, prove it. Don't come to me with a new idea unless you could prove that it's better than the old one. So, and that holds true when you're making statements like that. Don't accept statements like that blindly. There was two real problems with the statement that individual made. First of all, he said Debian is less secure than Ubuntu. But he never, first thing he never did was define what he meant by security. Security has a broad amount of coverage. So did he mean it was insecure to access? Did he mean it was insecure because the packages had were in need of being patched, and that we had CVEs that were still open? I can tell you from experience on both Debian and Ubuntu, both are very quick to deal with CVEs that show up in their releases. First of all, Debian sits right in the crosshairs of most of the pen testers that are out there doing actual security studies on the operating system. They use Debian. So guess what? Guess what's going to be the first thing they're going to test? So yeah, it sits right in the crosshairs. And the same thing, Ubuntu, which has a number of systems that are deployed out in the server market on the commercial side, yeah, they're going to be just as quick because, yeah, I mean, having open CVEs in an environment is not a good thing. So they're both the same. That's what it comes down to. But when somebody makes a broad sweeping statement like that, those are red flags. If they don't define their terms, they don't show you what the results, what they're basing that on, then it's simply an opinion. And in this case, the opinion is incorrect. So unfortunately, the sensationalistic side of making claims like that are the things that stay in people's minds. But the truth, and I'm sure that I will hear that down the road, that Debian is less secure than Ubuntu because somebody made an offhand comment. But I think you can safely see, based on my hypothesis and my experimental results, that I believe Debian and Ubuntu are the same secure in as far as their security posture and coming up. Now we're not done security hardening. We still have 8% to go on, or 8 points to go on both sides to get it to 100%. So in order to clear those things, there has to be some additional changes made. But I think, thank you, Ubuntu, for putting together that hardening script. That really saves an awful lot of manual time, and sure do appreciate the work that team has done on that hardening script. I hope that they open it up to eventually allow maybe the Pop! OS people will grab it and add support in there for their release, and maybe the Debian people will grab it and add support in there for their release, and so that we'll have versions of that hardening script for each of those distros, and that would be really nice. There is more to be done, because if I were to run the next phase up where I actually start to apply security checks against the system, I will find a lot more holes in the system than just this. So yeah, we're not done, but at least at this phase we are. Now, I have a number of videos on the other things that we need to do, but I think I'm going to leave it right here for right now. What I would like you to do is take a look at what I have done for work and pick it apart. If you have suggestions where I should go from here, how I can refine this, I want to turn this into something that is larger than where we are right now, so that we have a basis of trust in both Debian and Ubuntu that we can say going forward, if I run these things and I do these things, I'm at this level of risk. Because again, you cannot 100% secure anything. Not even your door lock can be 100% secure unless you weld the door shut. And even then, they might be able to bust it down. So, yeah, that's all I had for today. Hope you enjoyed this video on trying to take a look at the type of things that you hear out there and I just shake my head. It's just like, wow. We seem to have fallen into a trap where we will just blindly accept whatever anyone says. So be careful of that. Make sure that they define their. So just to reiterate, make sure they define what they mean by security in this case. What is the parameters of determining what is, what is best or least secure about either one, and remember that one of the premises that this particular person said was that Debian never updates their packages. That is completely false. Debian never upgrades their packages, but they update them all the time. So, yeah, security updates go through. Package upgrades do not. Again, Debian's philosophy on that is that if I allow upgrades in, usually I'm adding code, I'm enhancing my environment, and therefore my surface area may be expanding. And that is not a posture you want to just willy-nilly toss into an already running production environment that has gone through security hardening. Anyway, that's all I had for today. Hope you enjoyed this. Please like and subscribe. Hope to see you all again real soon. And leave a comment. Let me know. Bye for now.